Hi everyone, this is Grania, and I'm here with Flora today to talk about AI, power and privilege, the algorithm, and the underdog. So we're going to try to explore a pretty nuanced topic, which is how AI kind of reflects the world in terms of like power relations and power hierarchies, and if negative impacts, and just kind of like expand on it. So, we often think of AI as this futuristic and often utopian technology, but as Kate Crawford argues in her book, Atlas of AI, it's crucial to ground our understanding of AI in its material reality. AI isn't just algorithms and code, it's built on extraction, exploitation, and existing power structures.
Oh, that sounds so interesting. So, yeah, you recommended me to read the Atlas of AI, which was written by Kate Crawford. I just found it very interesting to read about these power dynamics. So let's dive more into it.
Yeah, definitely. So a lot of people discuss or kind of like label this book as quote like the Bible of AI. If you're looking to understand kind of more of the underpinnings of how AI works, like what powers the machine, it's definitely a worthwhile read. And she brings up a lot of points. So one of the main premises is AI's material reality. So kind of
Good.
deconstructing the immateriality, presupposed immateriality of AI, emphasizing that it's not just code and that has a physical presence and relies on material resources and occasionally exploitative human labor. So these are kind of like the main problems or like main tangents that she discusses. Number one being resource extraction, number two being data as a resource, and then number three being labor. So I think we can start by discussing resource extraction.
Yeah, because that one actually kind of caught me by surprise when I heard about it. Because resource extraction, like when I think of AI, and also because I'm working in it, you're mostly on your computer all day. Like,
Yeah.
what resources are you extracting from a bottle that's just running, and testing out your theories if they're working?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where we come back to this kind of like materiality premise. Because when you say I want to see pictures of dogs, I type dog into Google. Like that's entirely like it's on my computer and I only see like this Google search. Like what I'm not seeing is kind of the broader structures that go into facilitating that and even making that search possible. And a big one of those is resource extraction. So
But
adjacent to kind of the other, pretty deleterious manifestations of big tech, there are environmental and social costs of mining and materials essential to AI infrastructure. And that's often concentrated in developing countries. So we have Amnesty International in 2017 providing the statistics that over 70% of the world's cobalt, a crucial mineral for AI infrastructure, is mined in the Democratic Republic of Congo, often under hazardous conditions with minimal benefits to local communities.
dang,
So
I didn't. Yeah, to me, I was aware of what they were doing in Congo when it comes to like, yeah, building the when it felt the wires that we need for the internet and to build our like wireless cables. But that's part of the conversation.
yeah, so AI often, the way I see it is that AI often, it doesn't create kind of like new power dynamics, rather it accelerates
With
pre-existing power dynamics and exploitation because it requires such a surreal, we touched on this last week, how AI requires so much power, kind of to work. It takes 10 times the amount of power as a Google search. Of one AI search would take 10 times the amount of power. So that's a lot more mining. However, there are kind of trends pushing back against us and, trying to like usurp that balance. For example, the emergence of green tech chips. I believe it's called NVIDIA. It's coming out with
yeah,
green.
yeah, I'm familiar with the company also
Yeah.
because my old
So,
laptop is running on a NVIDIA chip. So
yeah. One of my friends is actually invested in them, so that's how I that's how I came to
yeah,
know about them. But so Nvidia is focused on, it's a cloud and data center kind of company, and it's focused on sustainable computing. Um, So saving energy, lowering costs, and mitigating climate change with AI and accelerated computing. Um, so, they're kind of aware of these difficulties and they're looking to ensure that it's done in a manner that is more ethical. And it's gathering a lot of traction. I mean, especially so this was kind of introduced to me from like an investment standpoint, which I personally think is an amazing thing. Because a lot of the problem with sustainability, or the reason why a lot of sustainability solutions fail, is that they're not economically viable. So people, to say for example, fast fashion, like it's cheaper to have your labor unethically sourced. However, if you have an alternative that is sustainable, kind of like hits these ESG targets, and then also is, like very economically efficient, then
Mhm.
you're going to have like kind of a winning solution, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Because usually the conversation you always have, also when it comes to sustainability, is for companies themselves. Like, okay, okay, this might be sustainable, but how is this going to profit us? Because, yeah, at the end of the day, they are still accountable to their shareholders to bring in money.
Yeah,
Um, Interesting
yeah,
to see them switch to more ethical procedures,
yeah.
uh, especially in this case. Yeah, I think we both know, since we're working in AI, that most of us actually are on on the precipice. Like, we want to be ethical about this because AI has such potential,
Mhm.
but we can do it right from the start.
Yeah, we can. We can. That's another thing that I think this industry kind of has the power to, change pre-existing relationships, pre-existing lines of production. Another, like, the major theme of this podcast is that none of this is new. It's simply like accelerated, or like kind of there's an additional degree of nuance kind of from the introduction of AI. But
Mhm.
I think that there's like a potential that it can be done in a completely different way, especially because like ESG and kind of corporate social governance has been pushed so much since the turn of the 20th century. Like it is now kind of a principle in businesses to have and focus on ethical production, or at least the pretense of ethical production, which is also, at least a step forward. So,
Yeah, and I think it also has to do with that the consumer now has more power compared to previous centuries, where they're actually how they decide to view a product can have an impact on your shares, how they do well in the stock market, but also who ends up buying them, or if they're being boycotted or canceled, thanks to
well,
also the power of
yes.
social media.
Yes, absolutely. And I was actually discussing this recently in the context of Israel Palestine,
Mhm.
and how Starbucks withdrew relationships with Palestine, or sorry, withdrew relationships with Israel, or took action regarding benefiting Palestine as a reaction to the boycotts that, and resulted in them losing millions. So corporations are kind of forced to react and respond to ethical concerns on the behalf of consumers, and consumers are very aware of this and are able to mobilize in a way that I kind of have not seen previously. So I think we're going to see this on AI, and I think we're already seeing it on AI, at least with regards to investment and etc. So with that being said, I think we've covered a decent amount of resource extraction. The next topic I'm really excited to talk about, data. We could spend like an entire podcast talking about this. It's pretty I think it's pretty.
It's a big part of our world.
Yes, huge part of our world. Huge part of our world. I love that you said that. Like that could not be more true. There is a quote. I actually should have I'm glad that you reminded me of it, because I should have started this little segment with it, that data is the most powerful resource of the 21st century. As opposed to, it was like, say, fossil fuels, coal. No, like data is the most valuable resource of the 21st century, and a lot of that has to do with AI. And getting into what the Kate Crawford and the Atlas of AI kind of regards data as doing. Um, the book kind of explains that data is often extracted from the global south or marginalized communities and then becomes a valuable commodity used to train AI models that primarily benefit Western corporations. So that's kind of a very loaded and large statement, but we can kind of unpack that and, discuss contours of it. So I think I would just start out by saying that the basis of facial recognition is actually drawn from mugshots. So prisoners in America were actually the basis of facial recognition technology as we know it today, because that was the highest concentration of, just faces, like publicly available to use faces.
Yeah,
Like that was
public. There's no
yeah.
GDPR violation or anything in this
Yeah,
case.
no GDPR. And with the 21st century, we're also seeing kind of not the rise, but just the straight up emergence, like because this didn't really exist before. The emergence of data rights and data concerns, like it is now kind of dynamic where your face is valuable. In the past, like if there was like a photo taken of you put online, you wouldn't really have rights regarding that per se. Now there's robust rights regarding that, and there is a trend where the rights of those within the global south to their data is inadequate in comparison to the global west. And additionally, AI that is often, kind of generated off the backs of data collected from the global south can be used to the disadvantage of those in the global south. One of my friends is doing her thesis on AI as used in immigration. And Germany actually created an accent detection machine to push back asylum seekers based on the AI deliberation of their home country. So in order to create this, Germany obviously is relying on different data subsets of accents. Like we were discussing the other day how, with our voices being online, there's enough data of our voices that someone could generate an AI model of, well,
but this also brings me actually to the thing that's happening right now. Do you know 23andMe? Sorry, when we're talking about data rights and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you know 23andMe? That's now currently gone bankrupt. So apparently, they're planning to sell, but that includes all the DNA data that they have from anybody who ever sent them their DNA sample.
No.
Has now a chance to be sold on to third parties. And there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. Oh, it's also like kind of complicated.
They were like, no, it's going to be anonymized. And I'm like, if you know anyone in the tech sector good at coding, they can re-engineer it and still find out if it's you or not based on your genetic markings.
No, it's surreal. Like, especially like what you can do with data in today's world, is kind of beyond the imaginations of even like us from like 5 years ago. Like it's accelerated a lot fast. For example, like with our voices online, it can be used to generate like AI models of our voices that can be used. A picture of my face online could be deep faked into something, a variety of like different things. Like data is truly like so valuable in today's world, and is something that has to be protected, and it's not really protected or used to the benefit at all of marginalized communities often. And I kind of have three different tenets of that I wanted to bring forward. So the first one is facial recognition and surveillance, with the problem being that facial recognition data sets often overrepresent white faces and then lead to higher error rates of people of color that can result in misidentification and wrongful arrest, and that disproportionately impacts marginalized communities. So there was a research paper called Gender Shades, which exposed significant racial and gender bias in commercial facial recognition systems. So we've already kind of discussed how the basis of facial recognition was drawn from mugshots, so not necessarily ethically sourced. And now we have kind of an example here of how data sets can prefer white faces and how that can be used in a manner that's dangerous. I also read recently from MIT about surveillance systems in South Africa and
Uh-huh.
AI being applied to those. Basically, these surveillance systems in South Africa can also misidentify the faces of people of color, leading, sorry, to wrongful arrest. And with the amount of surveillance and kind of AI systems at play, it's becoming a greater and greater problem.
Oh, that's yeah. No, I've seen that often come up in a topic, especially around when it comes to bias, when it comes to your skin color. That this has often come up also with when I think when Dolly, for example, was asked to create images of like a CEO, and then like a white man shows up with like white
Oh,
hair, and then you're
yeah.
like, okay, and then they try to make it better, but then you got some very interesting old German like Nazi pictures of people that you were like, okay, this is
Yeah.
going a little bit too far. Um,
Yeah. So yeah, it's really complicated because there's just so many questions of like, so you have to source the data ethically. The
yeah.
algorithms have to be, really precise, and then you kind of have an outcome, and then you don't want to. It's just difficult to kind of because we live in a world. We don't live in a utopia, and trying to create a model that is based off of the world, but also more ethical than the world itself is a very delicate balance, if that makes sense.
No, it's true, but I also think when it comes to these kind of things, especially when we're talking about like facial recognition, for example, I think it's also due to it's being mostly developed right now. At least the best models that are being developed are being in westernized countries, where
See?
yeah, simply put, the primary people that live there are white, so it will be more focused on white people,
Yeah,
which
definitely.
sucks for the rest. But
Yeah,
that also shows that inequality coming back forward, like, hey, the rest of the world also needs to start getting involved in this. So that's these kind of mistakes can be corrected.
yeah, absolutely. And that, is definitely relevant with regards to kind of the next premise that I had underneath facial recognition, which is data being used unethically in language models and cultural bias. So that's
Mhm.
large language models are obviously trained on massive text data sets, straight from the internet, which can include biased and harmful content. So the first LLM was built from this. It was called the Open Books Corpus, or I'll get the exact name, but it was basically just a bunch of books on the internet scrapped together, thrown into this LLM. And, it's from a while ago where what you could say, what you couldn't say, or people's beliefs were different to what they are now. So it could definitely did include some biased content. And this can lead to AI systems perpetuating stereotypes and using discriminatory language. And then, in addition to that, in kind of like a broader sense, as you were saying, AI is, at its core going to be less useful for people in kind of the global south because it's not, it's going to be created kind of for the benefit of the West, and that can have that can be seen on kind of like the lower end where it's not as useful or it's not as applicable, or the AI, can't accurately, kind of explain certain like cultural things of like the
Yeah.
country. But then there's like the more dangerous side where Germany is creating these AI accent detection machines and then using them in immigration.
Yeah, that also makes me kind of worried because I'm like, if you're very, like, for example, with me, you don't hear per se that I'm Dutch,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm wondering, can it then detect my accent based on, and then say, hey, you're from the Netherlands? Um, what kind of
Yeah.
consequence actually will have indeed for people who just are bad at German? what kind of accent will be like spit out because of it.
Yeah, no, yeah, it is really complicated. Another thing is that all this is so new that
Good.
the laws aren't like the laws aren't stringent enough to kind of ensure that everything is kept super ethical. So it's kind of a learning process, but you can't
Yeah.
have a learning process with lives at stake.
No, exactly. And I think in this case also, because you told me what they're developing, I at least hope that they are first starting off in sandboxes where you have a
Yeah,
closed environment where you can test this out to make sure that you don't make mistakes if they want to push it through. So that at least it will be ethically used correctly.
yeah, no, absolutely. So the
I think that's how
next,
you should process people at all when it comes to if they're allowed to stay in a country or not.
yeah, yeah, no, definitely, I agree with you there for sure. Okay, so our next and, kind of final aspect that we're discussing under data is medical AI and health disparity. So I think we have to do an episode on this soon, but AI is
Okay.
increasingly being used in the medical field for a variety of applications, including cancer treatment, like producing cancer treatment plans, to even like
Yeah.
mental health services for cancer patients, including terminally ill children underneath the age of 10. And just like to read different radiology reports. Just AI is being used in so many different applications across the medical field. However, we need to be extremely cognizant of the AI models, where the data is coming from, A, and then
Okay.
B, the kind of the reliability of the data and the algorithm, because AI models that are trained on data from predominantly white populations may not be as accurate or effective for people of color, which can lead to health disparities. And a study done in 2019 dissects racial bias in an algorithm used to manage the health of populations and found that AI models are not as accurate or effective for Black patients specifically.
So are we talking here about how to, for example, cure cancer for them or
No,
in
so there's like a lot of dicta on the subject. So I have worked previously around AI applications to cancer, so that's why I brought that up
Mhm.
initially, because that's kind of my background with seeing how
Yeah.
AI kind of can intersect with the medical field, but just a variety of different things, like AI and medical generally. Like even now, I mean, there's been times where like I've had like, oh, I can't hear out of my left ear. What do I do? And I don't Google it. I go straight to ChatGPT and I say, please help me, And a lot of people are kind of
Mhm.
doing that now. So there's a variety of different applications, ranging from really kind of almost trivial, like the example I gave with myself, to extremely severe with regards to cancer. But just a theme throughout all of it is that AI can be very imbalanced when it comes to generating results for different populations.
Yeah. Okay. No, that clarifies for me a bit more because, yeah, for me it's also a very sensitive topic because I know when a doctor doesn't listen, also because I'm a woman.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
like, please believe me.
No, and
Yeah.
that is such a huge problem. I mean, that is studied ad nauseum and proved beyond any form of reasonable doubt that doctors will have different responses to women that they will for men, and that's reflected kind of in medical precedent. So when that data is then used and put towards AI algorithms, we need to make absolutely sure that it is not doing so in a way that is going to recreate the disadvantage that already exists.
No, exactly. No, I agree with you. No, because for example, I do know, just to throw in a little bit positivity towards AI in healthcare,
Yeah.
that for example in the Netherlands at the time when COVID broke out, thanks to a collaboration between different parties, a system was created for the RIVM to detect if there was a high rise in COVID level based on sewage water, which I found very interesting.
Yeah, so cool. Yeah, you said that. No, and also like I'm a huge proponent for AI in the medical field because I've seen it like with my eyes with regards to like how powerful it can be in cancer research and cancer treatment. Like I am hugely in, I see it as a huge positive. And I also think it can kind of remedy a lot of the problems that we see with the medical field treating women and people of color unfairly. I think we just need to like kind of be very cognizant of data imbalance and representations to ensure that these problems aren't recreated. And then also really briefly kind of linking it back to that more globalized perspective. I and we I think we kind of touched on this, but I believe that, as AI kind of is incorporated into the medical field, it could exacerbate existing disparities. For example, countries in the global south, some of them have limited healthcare resources and infrastructure, and biased AI models could worsen those disparities by misdiagnosing or mistreating. And then additionally, there's inequitable access to AI benefits. So if AI models are primarily developed and validated in Western countries and Western contexts, the benefit of these technologies may not reach those who could, kind of need them the most. Because part of like the incredible benefit of having these AI models available is that you have not a doctor, but you have a means of kind of helping yourself at any point. Like, for example, there's now AI therapy apps that are, coming out, and they've been proven to be pretty effective. And, people in the global south kind of don't have access to that versus someone of privilege and kind of would.
Yeah. No, I agree, and I agree with a lot of things that you say
Thank
about this.
you.
But also, yeah, I think you already mentioned it, like why yeah, this is also why I think it matters for us to talk about it, especially during the podcast when called AI Insights, is to give people more also of the side. Okay, what are the inequalities when it comes to AI? And what you mentioned for the health sector, yeah, it's just so much. There's still so much to be done.
Yeah, I definitely
Um,
agree with you.
yeah, and especially with yeah, why it matters. Also, what you said, like it reinforces inequality, erodes privacy, and also perpetuates harm.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
yeah,
So AI systems trained on biased data can be used to reinforce stereotypes, discriminate against marginalized groups, and be used for surveillance and control. Data extraction can perpetuate pre-existing power imbalances, as we've already said, and it also allows those who control AI development to benefit from the data of marginalized communities without their consent or participation. Um, and that's really relevant insofar as I'm kind of I do law, and the EU kind
with
of
me.
has the most robust data policies out there, like GDPR, the GDPR Act, the EU AI Act, and it's in and then America, where all of these technologies, not all of them, but a lot of them are being developed. Like when I go back to America, I no longer have like the little consent pop up on my Google to like consent to give data. My data is just
Yeah,
like
you're
automatically
full of
given.
them.
Yeah. So being like a kind of global person, so to speak, myself, I notice the differences even as it's the difference of a flight um as to what happens with my data, but that shouldn't be the case. There should be kind of global policies in force, and countries need to be coming together in order to protect the marginalized, but also just, the world as a whole. So kind of removing ourselves from that conversation. The final kind of aspect of the three, we talked about resource extraction, we talked about data. Now I want
Perfect.
to talk about labor. So this is another kind of aspect that I had absolutely no idea about before reading the book. But Crawford kind of explores this premise that AI is not autonomous, but rather relies on vast human labor. So she challenges the idea that AI operates independently, and she emphasizes that AI systems are built and maintained by a hidden workforce performing essential tasks such as data collection, labeling, cleaning,
I
and crucially, content moderation. The labor is often obscured, leading to a misconception that AI is magically self-sufficient.
I can speak from experience working with AI models that this is true.
Yeah.
Because they're I, that because that's often what I love about when you hear like the newest AI inventions, and they're like, okay, like how did you like make sure that everything was working? We did it through an Excel sheet. And I was like, oh my god, Excel continues to exist even for this,
Yeah.
for like labeling, like you said, data collection, labeling, cleaning, and content moderation all happens still in Excel or Google Sheets or whatever you name it. At the end of the day, those are still things that will be used primarily to make sure that everything's put into the right boxes so that the
Yeah.
model knows what kind of information you extracted from and how to do it.
No, absolutely. And this is something that I had no idea about, to be honest. Like I did, as Crawford, attempts to challenge, think that AI operated independently. It was only after kind of a large amount of reading that I realized that the kind of sanctity of these systems is completely reliant on human labor, on humans sitting at computers, kind of clicking through images and seeing which ones are, obscene and then labeling them as obscene and giving that feedback. I'm sure a lot of college students would have kind of heard of this, but there's a new company called Outlier that's hiring college students at mass to do different aspects of content moderation and prompts, kind of
Labeling.
aggregation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you heard of Outlier?
I am familiar with those type of companies because I know companies like Meta, Facebook, they're also doing it, hiring students or other people to do this labeling, moderating, for like a lower salary. So I don't know if you, for example, are aware of that. For example, you can go to Lisbon for a year, work there for a company called Teleperformance, and they pay like 900 euros a month. You do. I think you do get like a room or something, but you get like paid like a very very low salary in a foreign country to do content labeling and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I have a source here that's kind of describing how this can really affect the most vulnerable. Quote, refugees help power machine learning advances at Microsoft, Facebook, and Amazon. And kind of this theme
Uh,
of big tech relying on victims of economic collapse. It specifically discusses the story of a woman living in Kenya, in one of the world's largest refugee camps. Like many others, brutally displaced and then warehoused at the margins of the global system. And
uh,
she spends her days kind of labeling videos, transcribing audio, or showing algorithms how to identify various photos of cats. And this work is often very, demanding, or people can be exposed to like very, kind of negative imagery with regards to the content moderation side. Actually,
yeah, the,
another thing I'm exploring right now and kind of the course of my legal study is the liability of internet intermediaries. So, for example, there's something that's dangerous, illegal, or just, obscene being displayed on Facebook, or like, I don't know, hate speech on Facebook. Um, is Facebook liable? Can Facebook be held liable? Can Facebook be sued? So content moderation is kind of becoming this huge thing, for the major tech companies, and the people that are kind of powering content moderation and ensuring that content remains monitored are,
mhm.
as the source kind of describes, hidden away and often not paid properly at all for their work, and kind of these victims.
Yeah, I wouldn't say they are being paid, but not like a living wage you would get if you
Yeah.
would be doing this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the nature of the work is often exploitative and precarious. the low wages, the poor working conditions. Workers often face long hours, repetitive tasks, and very limited
And
job security, and the mental health impact. So, content moderators in particular are exposed to disturbing content that can lead to trauma and psychological distress. So, yeah, just that AI kind of has this framework of labor. It's not the computer teaching the computer. There's a lot of human minds involved in this process, and a lot of that process is not entirely ethical.
no, and I think this also comes back to Europe itself after the digital act was enforced to force companies like Google, Facebook, or it's not Facebook, Meta nowadays, Twitter, you date that they have to actively moderate this and even notify the police or police entities within a country if an individual is spreading hate speech or showing harmful videos. I think it also
Yeah.
comes back to that as well. And this comes back to me after you like said you have to read the Atlas of AI. And me just discovering all these things, I'm just like, oh my god, there's so much
Yeah.
hidden stuff going on. And this
Yeah.
reminds me a lot of a book that I once read, which is called "The War." It is war, but no one can see it, which was written by
Yes.
where that all also kind of comes back into, but then more focused on cybercrime. Um, there's just so much hidden stuff in the world going on. And I think especially with a podcast like ours, like AI Insights, it helps our listeners to discover these things for themselves too, and being aware, okay, hey, this is the price attached to innovation.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But it's not a necessary price. Like there are so many ways in which that this could be, kind of reconfigured to be more ethical. It's definitely possible. And the first step is kind of awareness and then, a desire for change. And change is definitely possible. And I think we kind of saw that in the first tenant with the resource extraction, how NVIDIA and sustainable solutions are being prioritized because people are very aware, very, very aware of resource extraction, the toll that it takes, climate change. I think as more understandings emerge about data and labor with regards to big tech, we'll kind of see more improvements. And actually, I just want to dive really quickly into the next segment there on progress because I think it ties in really well. So I wanted to kind of bring forward this story from the Maori people. And this was kind of this came to my awareness from a piece from MIT. So the Maori people view data as I hope I don't pronounce this wrong, teonga treasure, and they want to assert their right to control its collection, use, and storage. They want to challenge the dominant model where large tech companies often extract data without consent or benefit sharing. And in action on this, Maori organizations are developing their own data governance frameworks and advocating for legal recognition of their data sovereignty rights. This is hugely powerful because this is an example of an Indigenous community kind of proactively recognizing that their data, that they have rights to it and that they want to protect their community and then not only, protect, but also advance their own interests by using technology for their own benefit. And that's kind of the second premise where they are currently building an Indigenous AI to teach the Maori language. And they're collecting all their own data and they're, it's all internal to the community, the construction of this AI system. They want to create an AI system that reflects their values, addresses their specific needs, and is governed by their own community.
That sounds so fascinating. So they're not connected to like an OpenAI API or something like that. It's really their own sovereign network that they've built.
Their own sovereign network, and then they have complete control over the data produced. So basically, they set out. They also they criticize Duolingo insofar as they said, okay, look, Duolingo is
Yep.
going to take this data from us in order to generate this language model, and then it's going to sell our own voices back to us by putting like a subscription model on top of an AI to learn our already dying indigenous language. This is unacceptable. And then what they did is they decided, all right, we're going to create our own AI model. We're going to create
Right.
our own digital infrastructure that
Mhm.
reflects our values and who we are as a community. And then they kind of reached out within themselves and were like, okay, we need people from the community that speak this language to send us data so that we can create this. And then I'm pulling up the article from MIT now just to get the rate at which they were able to collect that data. One second.
Yeah, because this is again something you have to build with your community, especially a dying language as what the Maori people are speaking. You
Yes.
can't get it anywhere else.
Yeah, and the within a generation, the proportion of native speakers plummeted from 90% to 12% of the Maori population. And this kind of attempt to create a Maori like digital infrastructure is an attempt to reverse that trend, to create childhood language immersion schools, adult learning programs, and kind of ensure that technology reflects their interest in the language.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. I know here in the Netherlands, for example, they are now have this AI assistant that some classes are using to teach in Dutch.
Really?
That is really cool. I'm not. I think it was called Anne or Anna. Um, but it's really interesting to see how Dutch children are adapting to this AI assistant to help them learn better.
Wow.
Um,
That is really cool.
yeah, and I'm seeing something probably something similar the Mara people are gonna do as well for in their classrooms or Sunday schools or Saturday schools, depending on which they go for. Uh, to teach children the language, because
Oh,
yeah,
that's so sick.
if you don't, then it's yeah, you're not gonna be able to. You gotta say you can, for example, in my case, I'm actually prime example. I can say like, I am part Indonesian, but I have no idea what how to speak the language because I never
Yeah.
got up to that part because we're always focused on being a Dutch person. So I
Yeah.
know Dutch very well, but I when you tell me can you speak Indonesian, I can say hello, and that's how far as I will go.
That's as far as I will go. Yeah. So actually, I'm Filipino. I'm part Filipino, and I don't speak a single scrap of Tagalog at all. And then my family, obviously the Philippines was colonized by Spain. My family actually speaks in Spanish first and Tagalog second. But there's kind of that they're trying to speak in Tagalog more. And
Yeah.
I just like a language is so intertwined to identity, and I think it is so important, especially as like English is the lingua franca and kind of taking over spaces to preserve indigenous languages. But I have the segment here that I wanted to bring forward that I mentioned earlier. So for in terms of data extraction, so we discussed throughout this past like 30 minutes, hour, I don't know what time we're at, but how data extraction can often be, not only extracted unethically, but used unethically. And here we have an example of it being done in kind of the best way. So the team that was trying to create this AI product announced a competition, contacting every Maori community group that they could find. And they revealed that whoever could submit the most recordings of like spoken word would win a 5,000 euro dollar I don't know which one grand prize. I don't know what currency. The entire community mobilized, um and people, it wasn't just money, it was the vision and the trust um that kind of enabled this to be a success. And within 10 days there was amassed 310 hours of speech text pairs from some 200,000 recordings made by over 2,000 people, which is an unheard of level engagement among researchers in the AI community.
No, exactly. This just shows the power of community, like what you can do once everybody is
Yeah.
set on. Okay, this is gonna help us. Well, in their case, for example, it will help preserve our language, which is dying,
And when,
being
yeah,
able to teach the next generation.
yeah, absolutely. And the thing is, like, just, if the internet is such a part of is so deeply entrenched in our lives that if the language that you're attempting to learn or is not available in a digital sense, for example, you log on to Twitter, or I guess that's used less nowadays, but you're on Instagram and everything is in English, you're less exposed to your own language, then you're going to know less of your own language. Because I mean, like, thinking about our own screen times, like we spend so much time online. If we want languages to survive, they need to be able to adapt to kind of like digital infrastructures.
Yeah, exactly. Because I do know that there are like these earbuds you can order that are like universal translators.
Yes.
And
Wow.
amazing as they sound, I'm still for having to be able to speak the language because otherwise it might still either misinterpret it or the language might be lost all entirely because people stopped speaking it because of the universal translator.
Absolutely. And
Then
then
again, Star Trek, but let's.
yeah. That's a really good point. So just to, I think, kind of wrap up this segment, I have a quote from the MIT Technology Review on this matter. So, quote, every new communication space that doesn't support it forces speakers to choose between using a dominant language and foregoing opportunities in a larger culture. If these new technologies only speak Western languages, then we're now excluded from the digital economy. If you can't even function in the digital economy, it's going to be incredibly hard for our languages to thrive. So that's just kind of, a testimony to how, as AI evolves into medical, AI evolves into
Yeah,
education. If you don't support other languages, then those languages are going to deeply suffer. And that has an impact on the identity and kind of well-being of communities.
yeah, no, I totally agree. And this is something that also came back in the UN General Assembly as well, where they made like a landmark resolution about the impact of AI and how it can help how it can help us globally, and
And
also how it can be sustainable development, like we've been discussing this past podcast. But it's only going to happen by working together as a community, because at the end of the day, we're all humans that are in the same boat.
yeah,
And we need to start talking to each other again. I think that's an important part too.
yeah. No, definitely. Because awareness is kind of the first step, especially with regards to, I think a lot of people, even in my network, wouldn't really be cognizant of the labor demands, the data demands, resource extraction. And that's why I started with it. I think it's kind of like the more known aspect, but the rest, I think, not necessarily as much. And then even just kind of supporting these movements for asserting data sovereignty, as seen by the Maori people. It's all really important. So I'm really grateful that I had a chance to discuss it today. And thank you so much for your insights as well.
Yeah, you're totally welcome. I'm very happy that you recommended this book to me. I'm definitely going to finish it now. Um, just to also want to get to the end of it because I'm a person that once I start something, I have to finish it.
Really?
No, but I think this also helped our listeners a lot to get more insights into what the actual what everything that's behind AI when it comes to resources, for example, and what that entails in order
Mhm.
for progress to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Because the thing is, AI has so many incredible benefits. I mean, I'm like one of like the biggest, like most ardent supporters, but by the same token, I try to discuss the negatives as much as possible because that's the only way that it can, be this force for good that I want to see in the world. Is if I also represent the negatives as fiercely as I represent the positives, and change is possible.
It always is. You just have to
Yeah.
take the first
Yeah. So this is our step today. And thank you everyone for tuning in and listening.
Yeah. So awesome. Hey, everyone, stay amazing, stay AI amazing, and let's keep